Good afternoon, dear TV friends of DMR TV, and welcome with me, your host, Father Eric Afongang, on our program, Discovering the Code of Canon Law. So last week, we looked at the principles that governed the revision of the code, which gave birth to what we have today as the 1983 Code of Canon Law. And we summarized those 10 principles into two major items which purport the seat of blessed memory emphasized upon. That is, fidelity to the teachings of Vatican II and the pastoral adaptations of the deliberations during Vatican II. So which meant the council, in coming out with the various decrees, declaration, and dogmatic constitutions, they were to be translated into legislature. And not just that, but the various legislation was to bear in mind pastoral adaptability, which meant that they could be lived out by those whom the law binds. And so today, like we said last week, we shall be looking at a diocesan synod. In a week's time, the bishop will officially launch the diocesan synod for the Diocese of Boya. And with the launching of this synod, it will involve several preparatory stages right up to the celebration of the synod itself during the year 2026. So, today our target is looking at a diocesan synod, but more from the aspect of canon law, that is giving a canonical perspective of it. So, in the first place, let's look at the key words which we have, and there are two: diocesan and synod. Now, what is a diocese? Lumen Gentium will refer to the church as the people of God. And in Book 2 of the Code of Canon Law, we are being told that the people of God are all those who, by virtue of their baptism, unite with Christ, the head of the church. And that is why that Book 2 is titled The People of God. And in talking about the people of God, we get to the point where we have the divisions of the church. We're looking at the hierarchical structure. We talk of the Pope, the Roman Curia. We have the College of Bishops, the Synod of Bishops, and then we have papal legates, what we call nuncios. And then we come down now, we have what we call ecclesiastical regions and provinces. And when we go down, we have bishops, archbishops, auxiliary bishops, and coadjutor bishops. And in referring to the diocesan bishop, it gives us a definition first of the diocese. That is, a portion of the people of God under whom is placed a bishop to take charge of. So it's not just an aggregate of people. There is a portion of the people of God, mindful of the fact that the people of God here has a broad definition. And that is why at the opening canons of Book 2, that is canons 201, right up to canon 208, we see that there is a distinction between the clergy, the laity, and between the laity and the clergy, we have Institute of Consecrated Life and Society of Apostolic Life, which make up what we call the people of God. And then we have the special type, that is the catechumen, who are not yet fully Christians, they are on their way. And then, as to those who are not yet baptized, we remember that in Lumen Gentium paragraph 16, there is that controversy as to whether we consider them a member of the church or not. But still, the church reminds us, as it says in Eucharistic Prayer 1, there are many whose faith is known to God alone. And so, after looking at the diocese and its constitution, that is who make up a diocese, the people of God, that is a portion of the people of God, we look at what is a synod. Synod comes from the Greek synodos, which means to walk together, to travel along together. So there is this insistence on journeying. So first, there is a way. Remember, ordos means way. So first, there is a way. That is a direction to be taken. And apart from the direction, there must be something that engineers the taking of this direction. And when we look at the combination of the two words, diocesan synod, we shall be seeing the direction which this way will be taken. And then we have syn, which means with or together with. So synodos will mean walking together. But now where are we going to? We are going somewhere. And at the level of a diocesan synod, we are walking towards realizing a better diocese. Not that the previous was bad, but how do we improve on our services and our witnessing of the gospel? And so we take that walk towards fulfilling that purpose. And not just that, in the just ended 2 sessions of the Synod on Synodality, there is an insistence on the fact that by virtue of our baptism, we all are united, and as people of equal status in the church who have rights and privileges, we are all called upon to contribute to the growth of the church, the spreading of the gospel, and also the witnessing of this gospel message. So because of this, we all, as those in the synod, are called upon to journey together. And in the journeying together, what are we exposing ourselves to? We are exposing ourselves to get the different opinions, the different ideas. For in that variety, we tend to share the beauty of the faith, that unity in diversity, as we get in the catechism of the Catholic Church. And so in sharing the unity in diversity, we tend to enrich each other. And through this enrichment, we also support the bishop in his legislative function, because from the various resolutions from the synod, what do we see? The bishop is giving several ideas on how to better run the diocese. And after penning down those ideas into concrete points, it is now published as synodal decrees or declarations. So, in summary, Canon 460 will define a diocesan synod as an assembly of the people of God in a particular church, comprising of selected priests and other lay faithful, who, in union with the bishop, provides and supports the bishop with ideas needed to foster the good of the diocese and the local church. And all of this is towards supporting the bishop in playing out his role as the one who governs that particular church. And so, we see that this is found in Canon 460 of our Latin Code, and in the Eastern Code, that is a code of canons of the Eastern Church, we find it in Canon 235 and Canon 238, paragraph 1. So we find this definition. And from the definition of a synod, 2 things are brought in mind, and they are brought out clearly. Number 1 is a nature. What is the nature of a diocesan synod? It is an assembly, what we call in the Latin coitus, which means it is a coming together of the various members who make up the people of God belonging to that particular church, and for our case, the church in the Diocese of Boya. And also, we see there is an outlining of the purpose. That is, why do we have a diocesan synod? And we are told that Its purpose is to assist the bishop in coming out with suggestions that will help him in fostering the growth of the diocese. So that is the first and the primordial purpose of a diocesan synod. Like I said, the synod is about bringing together the different stakeholders in the diocese. And that is why, still about its nature, we are told that it comprises of selected priests. And as we continue with our discussion on the diocesan synod, we shall look at the canonical criteria followed to choose the various members who will be part of the synod. But this is different from members who are part of the preparatory commission. As we move ahead, we shall look at what is a preparatory commission, who are those who are to be members, what are their functions, and this will be in distinction with the full members of the synod proper. So those who are members of the preparatory commission are not by default members of the synod, because sometimes their roles are different, and not just different, but canonically there are different modalities as to what they are all called upon to do during the synod. And so, apart from the selected priest, we also have selected members among Christ's faithful, within which we have also religious men and women. And also it is opened to the invitation of non-Catholics and even non-Christians. And we shall discover that when we will be looking at those who make up membership of the diocesan synod, with regards to the non-Catholics and non-Christians, their role is simply that of an observer. And it is at the discretion of the bishop to invite these people via their leaders. For example, if we are to have an observer from the Full Gospel Mission, then the bishop is to indicate to their general leader at the level of Boya, who will delegate someone to represent the Full Gospel Church, the Presbyterian Church, and even the Muslim community. And why these people are invited? So that their presence also reflects the ecumenical dimension of the church, and also that openness to get ideas from out of the church. And so we see this is very important. And so that is the nature and the purpose of a diocesan synod. But now, why do we even need a diocesan synod? In Canon 556, that is paragraph 1 of the 1917 Code, it was clearly stipulated there that a diocesan synod would take place every after 10 years. But over the years, it was found out that it hardly took place in some dioceses. While others followed that principle, many did not follow. And so the issue about the frequency became a problem. And so in revising the code, Canon 461, paragraphs 1 and 2, which outlined the frequency and why it should be called, explains that a diocesan synod is important because it unites the bishop with his people. And by this meeting of the bishop and the people, the bishop, when it deems it necessary, depending on the circumstances, he brings this point up to the Presbyterian Council and the College of Consultors, and with their advice, he can call up the diocesan synod. So it is taken for granted that before the bishop announced this synod, he has brought out the various circumstances which has occasioned the need for this synod. And with the deliberation of the Presbyterian Council and the College of Consultors, they advised him and gave a favorable vote And taking along their advice, he went on to announce that we shall have a diocesan synod. And they will remind us that the bishop who is the head of the particular church has the right to call a synod. But now, it is also clearly stated in the same paragraph 1 that this is strictly for a bishop who is residential, which means a bishop who does not have total control of a diocese, which means he has temporal authority, cannot call a diocesan synod. For example, an apostolic administrator has a temporal role in governing a diocese, so he cannot call up a diocesan synod, except otherwise in his appointment certain faculties were given to him to be able to do this. Also, if the bishop is in charge of 2 or more dioceses, looking at the situation and the circumstances, he may decide to call one diocesan synod which will combine the various dioceses under his charge. And there have to be clarity in terms of the deliberations. Why? We are looking at 2 different dioceses with 2 different pastoral situations and 2 different pastoral needs. And so when the synod is joined, it is meant that in coming out with the various points that will be deliberated during the synod, the differences in the both dioceses have to be taken into consideration so that one's own problem does not subsume the other, which means the problems of another diocese should not be swallowed up by the main diocese where the bishop is in residence and fully in charge. And so, we discover that as to the frequency, with the 1917 code, 10 years was given according to paragraph Canon 356, paragraph 1. But now, the frequency in the 1983 code is left to the diocesan bishop as long as he deems it necessary. So, dear friends, that has been it today in our program, Discovering the Codes of Canon Law. And so we have been looking at what is a diocesan synod. Why do we even need a diocesan synod? And in doing that, we have looked upon the nature and the purpose of a diocesan synod. The next time we meet, that is next Friday, we shall be looking at the members of the preparatory commission as we journey along the line to see what a diocesan synod is, so that as we come into the launching of the synod, we shall clearly understand what shall be unfolding right up to the main synod, which will be holding in 2026. So a big thank you to Ambrose Tasang, our broadcaster. A big thank you to Madam Joyce Bong, the station manager. And thanks to you, our dear audience who have been following us live on DMRO TV. Keep watching other programs in DMRO TV. I've been your host, Father Eric Afongang, and happy feast of the Sacred Heart of Jesus.